Welcome back to the Dogs and Deadlift podcast. Today we have another Aussie on the podcast, Ash Taylor from Dog First Aid Australia. Welcome, Ash.
G'day, mate. How's it going?
Mate, very, very well. Great to have you on as a guest. I really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat.
That's all good, mate. Anytime.
Fantastic. Thank you. I know that as I sort of mentioned before, we hit the record button. I've been following you for quite some time, and we'll get into your backstory and things like that very shortly. But coming into summer here in Australia, I thought it was a fantastic time. A few things lined up to reach out and get you on and have a chat about a few subjects. Look, we've got a few things to cover today, so super excited, mate.
Yeah, especially it seems to be the deadliest time of the year for us Australians this summer. So
yeah, for sure, mate. Before we get into a few questions that I've got here for you, and can you give us a bit of a history about yourself? Where you sort of come from. Feel free to go back as far as you like, but yeah, just give our listeners a bit of a backstory.
Yep. So I've been a dog handler for over 10 years now, traveling all around Australia and a little bit overseas work as well. During that time, I was also a medic because as a dog handler, you're sort of the support for everyone involved in the team. At the end of, I think it was 2015, I got out of a lot of security work, a lot of dog handling due to mental health. And I attended a dog first aid course here in Brisbane, which was the most pathetic thing I've ever seen in my life. So I've been teaching dog first aid for my own staff because I had my own dog handling business as such. So I thought, why not release it to the public? And here I am today.
Yeah, awesome. We won't name and shame, anyone at all, and I think sometimes it's potentially around just the education presenting. There's a whole heap of things that can, go into a good course or versus a not so great course. But, it's great that, so that your company's Dog First Aid Australia?
Dog First Aid Australia.
Yep. And the reason I found you, I think, is a few colleagues in the industry, that owned doggy daycares, dog trainers, were doing your course. Have you, is that sort of your primary business there?
It's about 50-50. Like I've got industry professionals as well as a lot of pet dog owners, particularly due to the dog parks.
Yeah. Okay.
There seems to be a very big problem surrounding them due to responsible dog ownership not being at the forefront of a lot of dog owners' responsibilities.
Yep.
But that seems to be a bit of a 50-50.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And your current dogs at the moment, have you got any? What do you got? A Malinois?
No, I've got no dogs at the moment, apart from about 20 stuffed dogs and mannequins and whatnot.
Yep.
My main boy was Randolph or Randy, which I don't think I've really posted him anywhere.
Yep.
I had him for about 4 or 5 years, and when I got out of dog handling, I retired him to Department of Corrections in Melbourne.
Yep.
And he was the best working dog I've ever had.
Yeah, awesome. I'm a big fan of, as I mentioned previously, and most of the listeners know, Malinois and Dutchies that I imported, but I've changed my breed over to German Shorthaired Pointers and changed my sports completely now.
That's a big change.
Yeah. Before we get into some of the structured questions and things like that, I suppose I just wanted to give a little bit of a disclaimer. Do you have where you and I are both not we're not vets, and any sort of advice here that people, we're going to suggest that people potentially go and see their vet ASAP. However, we can give advice and knowledge and education around the time that an incident may occur to the time that you get to the vet, and have I suppose hopefully achieving the best results between that time frame. Would that be fair enough to say?
Yeah, that's what we advocate, that
Hmm.
what we teach does not replace veterinary care at all. Same
Hmm.
with human first aid. It doesn't change the fact you might need to go to the doctor.
Hmm.
What we strive to do is teach people the safest, quickest methods to stabilize the dog in order to transport them to a vet.
Hmm.
So that's what yeah, we advocate, is it doesn't replace veterinary care at all.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose that sort of leads into our first, our first discussion point is, you've touched on dog parks, industry professionals. Why, in this is obviously all in your opinion. Where's dog first aid? How has it evolved, and why is it important?
Yep. It seems to be really big overseas.
Mhm.
Here in Australia, we seem to be behind the rest of the world by about 5 to 10 years in everything.
Yep.
I think it's because we're just so laid back, and we've got a big culture of she'll be right.
Yep.
And I even see it when I'm doing demonstrations or have a store at an event. A stall at an event,
Mhm.
where some people walk past and they sort of give you a weird look, like that'll never happen to my dog.
Mhm.
And I think it's a little bit of ignorance as well as a little bit of she'll be right.
Yep.
But dog incidents happen all the time,
Mhm.
particularly at those dog parks. That
Mhm.
seems to be a big thing in Australia,
Yep.
as well as just general injuries from going to the beach, going to the park.
Mhm.
We're very active with our dogs here in Australia, and just something so small like throwing the ball, the dog runs to get it, and a stick comes up and penetrates into their chest. Like,
Mhm.
it
Mhm.
happens a lot,
Yep.
and people just, yeah, they're not really, I think, willing to know that knowledge,
Mhm.
because they don't want to acknowledge that that could happen to their dog,
Yeah.
which I understand that as well.
That's right, and I suppose it's one of those things like with dogs and deadlifts. I'm a huge advocate for just little things like warming up your dog, cooling them down, rubbing them down. And and it almost goes hand in hand, right? Are you going to throw a ball, for instance, for a cold dog that's just jumped straight out of the car? He goes from 0 to 100 miles an hour, and then does a quick turn, and there goes a ligament or tendon, or the
Yeah,
injuries occur, as well as you mentioned, he potentially, there's a stick on the ground that he doesn't see and gets penetrated on it. So it's about creating that education, that mindset around thinking about, all right, what can we, what are we prepared for? Getting, the pre rather than the post.
yes, yeah. And like, as a dog handler, like, the way I looked at it was the dog was there to protect me, and I was there to protect the dog.
Mhm.
And you're a team unit or a family unit.
Yep.
And I think it comes down to mentality as well. Of I want to make sure I can do the best possible thing for my dog if anything were to happen to him.
Mhm.
So it's a lot about mindset as well, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So whether you're an industry professional or you're a pet dog person, listen to the podcast. We really want to just create that awareness today. That's why we're here to have this discussion around first aid and what you can do to get yourself prepared. Obviously, towards the end we'll share some links and some programs that you're running, Ash. But that's really centered about just education today, and create an awareness about it.
Definitely, definitely. Yeah.
And then I suppose, leading on, how have you seen the first, I suppose, the dog first aid mentality? How has it evolved? I know that you mentioned earlier in the US, they're pumping. I know there's a couple of large companies, that I've followed previously, in America, but we'll talk about Australia just for a moment. Are you seeing, some positivity come through?
Definitely. Definitely seeing a lot of positivity,
Yep.
particularly with industry professionals.
Hmm.
Like, a lot of doggy daycares, like, I've seen some phenomenal policies and procedures in place to protect dogs.
Hmm.
Everything down from what happens if there's a fire at the venue to what are we going to do if a dog gets injured, what
Hmm.
actions are there. And they've literally got every plan laid out. All their staff know it. It's written. It's up on the wall. Like, there's been a lot of improvements from say 5 years ago.
Yeah, awesome. And do you feel that that's going to keep trending? Particularly here in Australia, more industry professionals are don't always carry a first aid kit or know what to do when something happens.
Yeah, I think like the way I market it to
Mm.
a lot of industry professionals too is you can market this to your clientele to say, hey, we know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to keep on going up.
Yep.
I hope it does for the sake of our dogs.
Yep.
Because I've heard countless stories of people not stabilizing their dogs
Mhm.
and they don't even make it to the vet.
Yeah.
And that's that bridge that we're trying to create there
Yep.
to get that gap in the actual industry and field.
Yeah, for sure. And I suppose, what are you commonly hearing, is there a common set of injuries? I know we're going to talk about, hydration and heat stroke, and we're going to talk about some other, snake bites and stuff shortly, but, is there something, that's sticking out that's like, holy shit, this is occurring. I'm hearing these stories over and over about, where it be injuries or accidents or occurring.
Yeah, like from our data as such that we've
Mhm.
got, when it comes to working dogs,
Mhm.
the biggest threat is heat stress
Yep.
and heat stroke.
Mhm.
When it comes to pet dog owners, even when we're attending outside events, we
Mhm.
see a lot of that heat exhaustion in place.
Yep.
So definitely the heat, particularly with Australia, is
Yep.
probably the number one thing.
Yep.
Second thing, particularly at the moment, would be poisons, bites, and stings.
Yep.
So everything from snake bites to paralysis, tick, everything like that that's going on. They
Mhm.
would probably be the two biggest things in Australia right now.
Yeah, cool. And then that's probably they're on our list to chat about in a little bit in detail shortly. But
Yeah.
that's it's quite interesting, isn't it? That those are the common common denominators for both working dogs and your average pet dogs as well. So I suppose
Yeah.
we'll just jump straight in, mate. Heat stroke or heat stress. Can you just let's run us through obviously just some signs, symptoms, and what people potentially can do. I know that it is very common, especially here. We're just about to hit summer and it's hot as hell already.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'll cover three subjects. We'll talk
yeah.
about hydration, heat stress, and heat stroke because they're
Hmm.
three separate things, but they all relate to each other.
Yeah.
So hydration is it's a multifaceted sort of thing where you've got a number of things that play out with hydration, from everything to what the dog's eating to exercise to how much they're drinking and things like that.
Yeah.
During summer, we definitely, or through vigorous exercise, we definitely recommend supplements to help with that hydration level.
Yep.
So there's plenty out there. Whatever you do, do not put Gatorade or human products in with your dog's water like a lot of people do out there.
Yep.
There's actual canine specific electrolytes and things like that out there now.
Yep.
In terms of how to assess whether your dog is dehydrated or not,
Mhm.
the most common thing will be they're drinking a lot.
Yep.
Okay, that's the biggest thing you're going to see behavior wise.
Mhm.
In terms of the physical signs and symptoms, if you pinch the fur on the back of or pinch the skin / fur on the back of the neck
Mhm.
and you release it, if it doesn't go back to normal within a few seconds and it stays as a sort of a lump,
Mhm.
it's a bit hard to do it with nothing here, but
Just audio only.
yeah, it's already heard.
That's all right, mate.
But if you pinch that skin and it doesn't go back to normal pretty much straight away, then you can tell through that your dog's a bit dehydrated.
Mhm.
There could also be other medical things there involved, which is why, once again, it's important that we always take our dog to the vet as well,
Yep.
just to double check that it's not something else there.
Yep.
If it's not summer and your dog's still drinking a lot of water and everything else, and it's still dehydrated, there could be a lot of other health issues that are relevant to that as well.
Yep.
So we sort of advocate anything outside the dog's normal behavior
Mhm.
to take them to the vet,
Yep.
because dogs communicate through behavior.
Mhm.
And if they're not doing what they normally do, there's normally some sort of issue there.
Yep.
In terms of heat exhaustion, the difference between heat exhaustion and heat stroke is let's say you're out gardening all day,
Mhm.
you come inside, you have a cool beverage, you sit down, you start to feel better. That's heat exhaustion.
Mhm.
With heat stroke, you'll be out in the garden all day, you'll come inside, sit down, have a cool drink, be in the aircon, and you still feel like utter crap, like you
Yep.
want to throw up, you feel very ill.
Yep.
That's the difference between the two. Heat exhaustion is you're just exhausted from the heat.
Mhm.
Heat stroke is a life-threatening condition where you could, or the dog could potentially die from that,
Mhm.
particularly with dogs more so than us humans.
Mhm.
So the signs and symptoms are pretty much the same for that. I'll talk about behavior because that's the
Mhm.
first thing you're going to see.
Yeah.
So behavioral wise, the dog's going to disregard what you say in most cases. If you get a really fully switched on working dog,
Mhm.
they will literally keep working until they collapse.
Yep.
But not your normal pet dogs will go, no, I'm a smart dog, you're a stupid human. I'm going to sit in the shade.
Yep.
I'm going to find somewhere cool to be.
Mhm.
I'm going to drink water. They will naturally look after themselves.
Mhm.
So when you see a dog starting to do that, start nodding, start not listening to you,
Yeah.
you know that there's something wrong there.
Yep.
Again, change of behavior.
Yep.
In terms of the physical signs and symptoms,
Mhm.
obviously the dog's going to be drinking more water. They're going to be dehydrated to a point.
Mhm.
Um, they'll have squinty eyes. Normally their eyes shut, and they'll be heavily panting a lot.
Yep.
That's probably the two most common things, apart from the behavior side.
Yep.
Then you can get to the heat stroke stage where you've got vomiting, dog passing out, bloodstained feces. Like there's a number of different
Yeah.
signs and symptoms there.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
And I suppose that, like the number one thing that I advocate with our canine conditioning program is understanding your dog. Know your dog's behaviors inside out. I actually have a scale, a modified rate of perceived exertion scale for when we're doing our canine conditioning programs or our working programs. Yeah. So that sort of relates to everything you've just said about knowing and understanding your dog perfectly. Yeah.
yeah, no,
Yeah. you know we
definitely.
we don't always carry a thermometer around, and you can just go, hey, he's a bit over temperature today. um
Yeah. Well, in
um
saying that about conditioning, like
yeah.
we rarely use thermometers
Yep.
when we're dealing with first aid.
Yep.
The reason being is each dog is going to be conditioned to withstanding different heat.
Yep.
For example, there was a dog trainer in, I think it was Alaska,
Mm.
who was training dogs to go to Iraq
Mm.
back in the day.
Yeah.
And big difference in temperatures there.
Yeah.
So what he did was he built a shed and literally created the same atmosphere that you would have in Iraq
Yeah.
to get the dogs conditioned to that heat.
Yeah.
So you can even condition your dogs to withstand a bit more of a, or have a higher heat tolerance
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
through that conditioning as well.
Yeah.
But that's very difficult to achieve.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's no different to us.
Yeah.
If we're working an office job 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and then on the weekends we're coming out and doing vigorous exercise in the middle of the heat of the day, we're going to keel over pretty quick.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. All that conditioning plays a big part in it as well.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I agree. So, understanding your dog and before you go out there and, if you are looking at a performance dog, build up slowly,
Yes.
and take it easy. Definitely don't want to rush things and overdo it, and that's probably the biggest thing that, let's just say people have these high drive dogs. And as you mentioned, they just go and go and go, right? Is sometimes less is more when it comes to conditioning or training. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
And for like those high drive dogs, I find something similar to a HITS program works well.
Yep.
Of that high intensity but a short time frame.
Yep.
As well as people forget mental stimulation is there's got to be a balance between physical and mental. So yeah.
I agree. And look, I'm just going to shout out just quickly. So I'm an ambassador for Sen Dog Nutrition. And over the last probably about 8 weeks, I've been trialing their new electrolyte program, electrolytes as well. Yeah,
Yep.
they're based on the sunny, sorry, North Brisbane there. I was going to say sunny coast, but North Brisbane there. And, I'm loving their products at the moment. So just a shout out to Sen, disclaimer, yes, I do get products from them, but I like to be as transparent as possible. And over the last 8 weeks, I've been increasing using their product, their new electrolyte in my training and nutritional products, and I'm seeing great results. But as you said, there are a number out there. But I like to supporters of the show, mate. I just like to give a shout out.
Well, yeah, no, that's beautiful. Like there's a few products I've trialed over the years,
Yep.
and there's one called, I can't even remember the name of it actually, but it looked like the dog had vomited in the water.
Okay.
So I was turned off that,
Yep.
and so was the dog.
Yep.
And then I found a greyhound one. I forget the actual product name, but it was a somewhat of a yellow sort of fluid.
Yep.
And it just looked like normal water, and the dog would drink it. I didn't
Yep.
want to vomit.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
that's what I advocate as well. Like I
Yep.
won't literally present a product unless I've used it myself as
For sure.
well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And look, mate, I'll see if I can, might be able to hook you up with something as well, for coming on the show. I'll see if I can post a hydration out for you to try. So, like I said, I like to support, supporters of the show. So I'm sure that they'll be able to look after you there some way. But moving on from that, snake bites. So I was speaking to a local club member just recently, and she is in the veterinary industry. She said, I asked her about ticks at the moment, here in Australia, and she actually said the most common thing she's seeing is a lot of snakes. Can we talk about that for a moment?
Yep. So with snakes, we can cover three other things as well,
Yeah.
Such as the funnel web spider, the blue ringed octopus, and the cone shell, because they have the same treatment for those four things.
Okay.
So no matter what snake it is in Australia, we class it as venomous, whether it's tree-based, sea-based, or land-based.
Yep.
It's easy just to class those devil noodles as all the same.
Yep.
Because identifying them is too hard. The funnel web spider is found in Southeast Queensland and New South Wales.
Yep.
Very aggressive spider, which will literally chase you or your dog down. The blue ringed octopus found in rock pools all over the coast, and we tend to take our dogs to the beach.
Mm-hmm.
So there is a possibility of that happening. The cone shell, I've never heard of a dog being stung by one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we ever will. It's just us stupid humans who pick up shells.
Yep.
And that's how we normally get done over by those.
Yep.
The problem with any poison bite or sting is we have to physically see the dog being stung or bitten by these things, because it is literally impossible to tell otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
So when it comes to treating those four things, we've got what's known as the pressure immobilization technique, or PIT for short, which basically what it involves is those four things rely on the lymphatic system. Now, the lymphatic system of the body of both humans and dogs relies on movement to push the fluid around the body. So the key is immobilization, particularly with dogs. So if you suspect that the dog has been bitten or stung by those four things, the best thing you can do is pick the dog up and take it to the vehicle, because you're probably going to be out somewhere where this has happened, or even in your home, the backyard, or possibly in your house, knowing Australia too. So the immobilization is the key there for dogs. So you want to pick your dog up, take it to the car, hopefully crate it, if your dog's crate trained. The worst case scenario would be literally tying the dog down to a board in order to immobilize it. But we don't recommend that too much unless you train the dog prior to be comfortable with that. but the key is immobilization, stop the dog's movement.
Yep.
Most dogs tend to get bitten on the face, particularly by snakes.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way to properly bandage that area, because the proper bandaging technique is a pressure bandage.
Yep.
And it's just too difficult to bandage the face, particularly in your squishy face dogs.
Yep.
Absolutely impossible.
Yep.
So we advocate that minimalized movement is the key to survival there.
Yeah.
And the worst thing is you're probably not going to know the dog's been bitten by something.
Yeah.
So it comes back to, again, that change in behavior. If you're noticing a change, get it to the vet as quickly as possible. And I can give a good example of that from a paralysis tick. So I had a young male I was looking after for a while, and I went to the shops, was gone about half an hour, came home, and she was literally laying in the rain on her back with her legs in the air. And I thought, yeah, she's a bit dopey and she would do something like that.
Yep.
But it's a bit weird being out in the rain. So I called her and she didn't move. And I thought that's a bit weird. Because normally when you get home, your dog's waiting for you there, wagging its tail.
Yep.
So that was already a bit weird. And then I called her and she didn't move. And I thought, that's really weird. Went up to her and called her name again. And I saw a little twitch in her of her ear. I'm like, okay, she recognizes that I'm calling her name, but she can't move by the looks of this. And given the seasonal time, given what I was seeing, I suspected paralysis tick, and got her to the vet within like the next half an hour. And it was confirmed that she'd been bitten by a paralysis tick, even with all those preventatives.
It's interesting. And I just wanted to touch on it quickly. I had a mate that's been out hunting, and he was in his I'll say thongs, but sandals for the guys in America. Okay, he had his pair of shorts on and his sandals on, and he thought his dog got bitten by a snake, and he was trying to wrangle the snake to catch it, to take it to the vet as quickly as he could. So we definitely
don't do that.
That's right. We certainly don't go wrangling any snakes or spiders to capture it to take it to the vet.
Definitely. With the anti-venom now, it's pretty much one for a number of snakes. So there's no need to really identify the snake like that. If the snake's still there and at a distance, you can probably take a photo and show that to the vet. But otherwise, leave those nope ropes, those devil sticks, those devil noodles, leave them the hell alone.
That's it.
In most cases, if you leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. In most cases.
That's exactly right. Well, I was only just out hiking last week, and it's beautiful weather, and I looked up, and he was the biggest snake I've ever seen, and I froze for a moment, but on closer inspection, zoomed in on with my camera, and it was obviously it was a python. But it was nice and healthy and nice and fat, and he was lying across the trail. So obviously when I hike, my dog's out, is in my out in front of me, but we both didn't quite see it, until we're almost right on top of it, so it was it could have been a brown snake, it could have been a deadly snake, but it was certainly scared the bejeebers out of me once I've got my headphones in listening to a podcast and look up and here's a big fat snake.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah,
for sure. So as you mentioned, just to recap, immobilize the dog as best you can, and obviously, straight to the vet. If it's interesting that you mentioned that that most commonly they're bitten on the face rather than the limb. So obviously with us humans, we can immobilize the limbs when press legs and arms with bandages and things like that. But I didn't realize that the most common location was on the face. And I get it once we talk about it, but it's not something that they go and have a sniff and then get bitten, but it's not something that I would have thoroughly thought about.
And in saying that, even with humans with the first aid, you can lay down and not move and survive a snake bite. we're moving towards that immobilization being the key rather than the pressure bandage and everything else now.
Yep.
Immobilization, lay down, don't move.
Mm.
And it transfers over to the dogs as well.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, let's I suppose move on. That's fantastic information out there. For deep lacerations, I know that we spoke about it earlier in regards to penetration injury, but we're seeing dogs, whether it be walking on glass or get those deep lacerations just by being dogs. Can you talk about how those injuries are occurring, and also a little bit about what you could do to prevent those? Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
treat those.
So it depends on the type of bleed that's involved with those. If it's a minor to moderate bleed, direct pressure, your clotting products, tight bandaging, not tight enough to cut off the circulation, but reasonably tight. That's all that's really required for those. If it's a severe bleed, that's a whole different kettle of fish,
Yep.
Depending on where it is. So we'll just stick to minor to moderate because that's
Yep.
the most common to see.
Mhm.
So direct pressure stops all bleeding. So what we want to do is we want to hold pressure on that wound for about 5 to 10 minutes to try and help the clotting process. And then once we've done that, we can bandage it up and transport the dog to the vet to get looked after.
Yeah, fantastic.
The most common areas for those minor sort of cuts and things like that are your paws and your limbs, because they come into contact with debris and things like that as you're walking along. The hardest one would probably be bandaging paws. That can be a bit of a nightmare. Particularly most dogs don't like their feet being touched.
Yep.
So what we recommend is, once again, that prior conditioning of doing a head to tail assessment. So what I tend to do with my own dogs is I'll make it a big game, because making everything a game when it comes to dogs, it's enjoyable for you, the dog, and it lowers stress too, particularly in those life-threatening events or first aid events, I should say. So what I'll do is I'll start at the head, work my way down, sort of rough the dog up a bit, feel all around the ears and whatnot, and continue all the way through the dog's body. A part of that process is I'll vigorously play around with the paws, put my fingers in between the paw pads, because dogs absolutely hate that. So it's just conditioning them that it's a big game. So when you're doing first aid on them, they think, oh, sweet, we're having a bit of a game, even though you as a human are stressing the hell out that this is happening to your dog. So you can keep the dog relatively calm.
Awesome. And that's what leads into first aid, like first aid kits and equipment, mate. I know that I when I'm going out and doing training sessions, etc., I've got my I've got my full kit, and then when I'm on me personally, we'll just have a little sort of a few bits and pieces, I should say, a little pack. Can you run us through, moving on from, we've talked about, pressure, bandages, things like that, what you recommend, a few things in a first aid kit, and potentially if you've, do you sell them and things like that, mate?
Yeah, so we normally do custom kits.
Yep.
We're not like everyone else selling cheaply made Asian shit, because that's all it is. Like half of those kits I wouldn't even buy for a human. But it depends really on where you're going, what you're doing, and also legal requirements as well. So what I normally recommend is there's a brand called Survival First Aid here in Australia, and they sell a workplace compliant first aid kit, which it's about the size of a small to medium handbag, and it's perfect for particularly industry professionals, because it meets the OHS guidelines for the legislative side. Plus, as well, it covers every emergency. And most of those items can be used on dogs as well. Specifically, items we add to those kits are a clearly marked canine thermometer. Because if anyone out there that's not aware, the human thermometer goes in one way, the canine thermometer goes in another, and you do
That's
not want
right.
to get those two mixed up. We Given with that, we normally have satchels of KY jelly, which we what do you call those things? We rubber band to those thermometers as well
Yep.
for the comfort and for the comfort of the dog.
Yep.
Plus, we can also use the KY jelly for chest seals and other things as well. Sorry, to help with chest seals and whatnot.
Yep.
You definitely want some cohesive bandages.
Yep.
I use those a lot on humans as well, particularly for sprains and strains, because
Yep.
they work a lot better than cotton bandages, for example.
Yep.
They would be the two biggest things I put in there for a dog.
Yep.
I could list 101 other things, but they would be the two top ones.
Yep.
The third, I love the I call it the Oles bandage. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. It's OALES.
Yep.
That is the best bandage I've seen on the market. For example, when I work, all I carry is a tourniquet, one of those Oles bandages, and that's basically it.
Yep.
And that covers most things I'm going to probably come across.
Yep.
So having those two items on me at all times, I'll also have that bigger kit back in the vehicle.
Yep.
So it really depends on what you're doing and where you're going.
Yeah.
A lot of people will just buy a stock standard kit and they'll use that for everything. That's not the most ideal situation. You really want it to be specific to your needs.
Yep.
And most generic kits just don't cut the mustard.
Yeah, for sure. So guys, if you're listening out there, and as Ash mentioned, that he can guide you, and if you wanted to reach out, he can guide you in regards to a custom kit for either your business or obviously I'm involved with the sledding dog world, so whether you want to attach a a kit to your vehicle for that, certainly a great idea. So in regards to that, I definitely understand what you're saying. Customized to suit your needs, and the cheap things that you buy off off wherever, some internet site, Facebook Marketplace, wherever, and not probably ideal. All right. So, definitely feel free to, to reach out to Ash and have a chat about your first aid requirements there. And then, let's talk about your courses, mate. I know that, you're doing face-to-face here in Brisbane, which is fantastic, which I noticed one popped up the other day. Just want to see if I can, if everything lines up, I'd love to come down and attend one as well face-to-face, but you've got some Zoom, online stuff now.
Yeah. We've got the last course of the year in October, at the end of October, for the face-to-face, until we work out what the hell Queensland is going to do with the COVID stuff. But in between all that, we've got Zooms in place now as well. So the Zooms are literally sitting like you're sitting in a classroom. I've tried to keep it as authentic to that classroom environment as possible. So I run it exactly like I would a class. So you still get all the information. You're just not physically there to do the practicals. But we have some students who are sitting there with their dog and they'll start practicing on their dog as they're going through. So yeah, we've got those. We also do private courses as well. We come out to your workplace as well, and we also do a little bit of, I'll call it tactical canine first aid, canine tech. We do a little bit of that as well. I was going to ask, I know that you recently did a summit with TACMed. I follow TACMed quite detailed. I'd love to get on one of their not necessarily their canine stuff, but their human stuff. I love it. I love that sort of first responder, tactical stuff. But I know you did a presentation for their summit recently. I did an absolutely terrible presentation for that, as far as I'm concerned. It was my first time using Zoom or anything like that. So I was quite nervous, and just from what I saw, I was hopeless at doing that, because I'm used to presenting in front of people. And I'm literally looking at myself on a computer screen. So it was quite different. And that's what actually got me into the Zooms, because I realized that this is the skill I'm going to need and I don't have it.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
but what we presented there was we presented our 10-year research on police dog deaths in America,
Yeah.
Which that's what gives us a lot of our working dog data.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, the only thing that's really different
Mm.
compared to us and them
Mhm.
is their number 2 cause of death is firearm related.
Yeah, sure.
Um,
Yep.
but
Yep.
yeah, that's the only real difference there.
Yeah, that's interesting. And as I mentioned, so we've got, we've got 50% of our listeners roughly based in America, listening to our podcast. So, you can, the good thing about, having a good understanding of their working dog culture and also having the Zoom stuff, they can, they can chime in if they needed to, and obviously, do some online education there, which would be fantastic.
Yeah, the only thing that doesn't particularly fit
Mhm.
is the poisons, bites, and stings.
Yep.
Because I don't sort of know what they've got over there and how
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
treat it,
Yep.
but everything else is literally the same worldwide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Awesome. Awesome. Mate, so how do how do people go about finding you? Socials, website, what's the best way to contact you?
through any of them.
Yep.
I will admit I'm pretty hopeless at responding because I'm normally on night shift or working somewhere, or I'm always
Mm.
doing something.
Yeah.
But I'll always get back to people. It might
Mm.
just take 48 to
Mm.
48 hours or so.
Yeah.
So social media, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram.
Yep.
We're also on YouTube, but I don't really have much up there at the moment.
Yep.
You can find us on Google through
Mm.
Google search,
Yep.
or directly to our website at www.dogfirstaid.com.au.
Yeah, awesome. And I'll in the below in the podcast and YouTube video will go up as well, mate. We'll link to all your necessary, all your links as well. So that's no dramas at all. But I think that's a great chat. And thank you very much, Ash from Dog First Aid Australia, for joining me on the podcast today. I really thank you very much, mate.
No, that's all good, mate. Anytime.
Thank you.